Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I'm your host, Florence Adu, coming to you with part 2 of my conversation with Dana Week. She is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of MedTransGo, a healthcare technology startup based in Atlanta, Georgia. Prior to MedTransGo, she co-founded the Black Angel Tech Foundation, which was created to support and increase the number of underrepresented minorities in technology. She has also held positions at AT&T, Pfizer, and in several innovative entrepreneurial ventures, which if you didn't listen to part 1, go back because she has some great stories about how all of those things have culminated in where she is now professionally. She is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Westminster Schools of Atlanta and has served as treasurer of the Atlanta chapter of Jack and Jill. She's a board member for Blue Owl Capital and a board member for the Alliance Theater of Atlanta. She also serves on several task forces and committees at both Stanford University, our alma mater, and Columbia Business School, including serving as a co-chair of the Stanford Lead Council, a member of the Stanford Humanities and Sciences Council, and a founding member of the Women's Circle at Columbia Business School. Again, in case you missed it, go back to part 1 where we get to know a lot about Dana's background, and we're picking up the conversation with MedTransGo. Going back to the idea of Atlanta, you started MedTransGo here.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And this is your hub. And so, but you are in 11 states?
We are in 12 to 14 states.
More. Nice.
Yeah. So we have a strong presence in the Southeast. Mm-hmm. We're growing in Illinois and Texas and Colorado. Mm-hmm. But, we ultimately have been able to start to build the infrastructure based on certain customers and then kind of build around that. And so it's really been an exciting opportunity because each state is slightly different, but at the same time, the need for our services, yes. Which is...
yes, so tell us. Tell us, MedTransGo, how did you brainchild it, and how are you making it happen every day?
So the brainchild is really actually my husband, also our classmate, Obi Ugonali, yeah. And he is an orthopedic surgeon, as I mentioned, here in Atlanta. And he has a busy practice, and one day he experienced these cancellations on his surgical day with back-to-back cancellations that were 2 very kind of complex, big procedures that would have been, a couple hours each. So he had this 4-hour window on a day when you normally would literally not even have time to eat. Yeah. And he looked into why those canceled. And in one instance, it was because a Spanish interpreter didn't show up. And in the other instance, it was because a neighbor canceled the ride and they didn't have a ride home. Okay. And he was like, these are so solvable. These are solvable issues. Like, what I'm doing, or this is my saying, what he's doing is the hard and complex part. Yeah. Getting there shouldn't be the most challenging piece. Sure, yeah. And so he and I talked about it and we looked into it, and we actually realized that, transportation and interpretation are the leading causes of why people cancel. Mm-hmm. So over 54% of cancellations are due to mistransportation and interpretation. So we built a platform that provides a marketplace with access to safe and reliable transportation, interpretation in over 100 languages. And that transportation can be anything from a curb-to-curb ride, similar to maybe even a ride share, but it also can be wheelchair accessible vehicles, stretcher vehicles, somebody who needs a little bit more care, so a concierge type amount. And so, when people get into certain situations, or if their family members do, and you can't provide that transportation, which is increasingly a challenge, and especially amongst underrepresented groups, people in rural communities. And so they ultimately make the choice to not get care. Right. And so this is impacting people's health. It's impacting communities. And, it's a solvable challenge. And so these are things we can do. And there's a class of transportation providers that are non-emergency medical transportation providers. And they have the skill set if you need oxygen or if you need basic care. They have the insurance, they have the background checks, the HIPAA compliance that protects people in a way for healthcare that you need. If you have dementia or you are, being treated for cancer, you don't want somebody random that doesn't have that. And so how do you have access to that? How would you even know when you get into that situation that these non-emergency medical transportation providers are there? Sometimes people do high-cost ambulances when you don't need that. And so we work with facilities, hospitals, and care providers to tap into that network of transporters, interpreters, and other ways that people cancel. And so what is great is the need is there, and our technology, which we've built, this proprietary technology, matches and has an algorithm that matches and does all the kind of work is into who is the best person for you on each ride, each side of the ride, and how do we make it more efficient and consistent in that way. And so not only then can we do that, because we have a tech solution, we're able to build a database of numbers and information, which you can ultimately combine with electronic health record, demographic information, so you can understand, if they are this, and this, then ultimately we should just offer transportation because they are going to then go to more appointments. And, like maternal health care is a huge problem in Georgia.
Okay.
And, it's basic care, being able to see doctors while you're pregnant or just in general along the way. And so all of those preventative care measures can actually impact later on more catastrophic challenges. And so being able to kind of connect those dots and have those data kind of pulled together is the other really exciting part about what MedTrans Go does. And it's a lot of the technology behind the scenes that you don't feel, but we put the human-centered piece. So the patient is going to hear from the transporter, hi, I'm going to be in a white car. I'm going to see you at a certain thing. And so the notifications actually go to the transporter. It's so that the patient feels what healthcare needs, which is a person, a human, or they hear from their doctor. Right. And so we have that. And then the interpretation, it's in-person interpretation, video interpretation, and phone interpretation. And so, an American Sign Language interpreter, being able to have that person who's either in a different county who can come over to be there or just even available, it allows you to kind of match with that.
So very interesting. So it's a B2B. So you serve on the vendor side, right? So I say the vendors, meaning the service providers, the interpreters and the transport companies, and then also for the institutions, right? And so for each side, is there a dashboard that they're both using?
Yes.
And then, so that connects them.
So we have 3 dashboards. It's like 3 apps all in one. Okay. And so one is for partners, which is what we call our transporters and interpreters. Yeah. And one is for our providers. So the hospitals, the clinics, and others. And then we have an administrative portal that basically pulls everything together and we see all the different pieces together.
Got it. And then, so each of them, this is a kind of business question, like revenue question. So are the partners, is there a membership for them? Do they pay to play? How are the funds?
Yes, no. And actually, it's a very interesting question. Right now, we don't charge our partners to be on the platform because that's actually the supply that we're doing. But we vet them and we make sure that they're the ones that ultimately our customers want to see and can match. And so we get paid by healthcare providers who want to be able to have access to this marketplace.
Okay. And so then they pass that cost on to insurance companies or to the individuals?
Yeah, I mean, it's a range. Some pass it on to insurance, and we're working to actually get the insurance embedded into our platform in general. Some pass it on to patients, but the bulk of them actually realize that fundamental to their business is that they're there.
Coming, yeah.
So they invest in that in that infrastructure, and they will do the numbers. And a lot of times, a lot of our customers are actually using rideshare already, which is not as safe, has the risk, doesn't have the data, doesn't have that ultimate track record to do that. I mean, it's good for some things. I mean, again, but I mean, you and I, if our family member, if our parents had dementia, I wouldn't want to put them in an Uber and assume that they're going to get dropped off on the curb. So this is really that extra need to make sure that that's happening.
Interesting. And so building the business, I mean, it's a great business model and it's a great idea. So you come from the venture space. How did you actually move through? Do you have a venture investment? How is the company funded?
So initially, a lot of our funding we bootstrapped and had, have a network of angels that, believed in believed in us and believed in what we were doing. And so often, others in the industry, other doctors who sort of oh, I totally have this problem. And interestingly enough, I think COVID validated what we were doing, because all of a sudden people were like, oh, there's no one here. It's shut down. We really see the impact when people don't come. And so, we have been successful at raising from some strategic partners, but mainly angel investors. And now we've raised almost almost $7 million.
Wow. That's
we're closing an extension, and so with that extension, we should be at around the $7 million.
Okay. And then, so thinking about growth and what's next, and how you mentioned building your business around certain providers, right, in other states. Are you seeing that? Because there are some national, like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, those types of ones. Are those on your radar to expand into other? Because some states have, like New York has a transport kind of system. Like I've seen it, the vans that come and pick people up. It may not be as I don't want to say as systemized, or it may be, but I've seen those vans. So different cities or different states have different systems. So how are you seeing your expansion with the national players, and then even potentially like white label?
Well, the opportunities are,
Endless
and limitless, and we, interestingly, I mean, there are definitely, brick and mortar companies that do non-emergency medical transportation that, work with certain hospitals. And for them, it makes sense to invest in just working directly with a particular group. And sometimes they also do ambulance and transportation. What we do, and we're actually seeing this more with hospitals as well, but we provide that network that you wouldn't be able to build up if you have, even a huge multi-facility clinic that, you don't want to have that one driver. Then when they're busy, like what happens? And what if traffic delays them? And so this just gives them access to that infrastructure. And so even in the New York area, this is there's a similar infrastructure. And we've started talking to, different groups, insurance companies, others. In fact, there are even big corporations who sort of self-insure. This is an opportunity to kind of work through there. Because there are so many opportunities, and because we've already started to build up a large supply in the Southeast, we have decided to kind of really focus and grow in certain areas that are of great need here, and then we'll start moving into some of the other large metro areas. But, just in terms of, revenue growth and projections, like we see even just with the current customers that we have, that we can really grow our business to forecasted amounts or projected amounts without even having to expand into other cities or with other people.
Wow. Wow. That's great. Yeah. I mean, that's the idea, is that when you solve a need, then you can continue to grow in those places. Awesome. So let's think about mindset for a minute.
Okay.
And I'll ask you about your mindset hack. So this is what we like to understand, what you do to hack your mind. So it's something that you can imagine, something that you do, something that you practice already. What is your favorite mindset hack?
Oh, it's funny being a working mom. I feel like that this is an area that I have to continue to work through and do. I'd say there are probably two things that come to mind, and one is that I do try to walk. And we were runners, and so I wish that I could invest the time in walking. And I've done a number of different exercise things where I have started and stopped. Yeah. But the walking is very easy because it's, you could even walk in like your regular street clothes and that's fine. And the weather is nice and it gets me outside, and I can either listen to an audiobook or get on a call. But that's one that I do. But I think the real mind hack is travel and staying engaged, because I really do think that part feeds my soul. I think just being on a plane where you have no kind of out-to-side distractions. I mean, I certainly have spent some time where I'm like on my emails the entire time, but you can't do Zoom, you can't do phone calls, and it's generally just like my quiet zone, and I'm in the clouds. And I think that that's one of the pieces that I love the most. And then I arrive in these destinations like New York and California, Stanford, and there's something about it that just makes me, just calms me, because there's the familiar. It's like a big hug. So
I like that. A big hug travel. I know, I love it. So obviously we were on that same mindset hack space. And so you mentioned engaging, and you're engaged in quite a bit of voluntary activities. Yes. So there's one in particular you mentioned that is the Blue Owl Capital Project. Now tell us about that, because the schools make sense. I think, was that your children's schools?
Westminster Schools is my children's school.
Yes, and Jack and Jill, I'm sure your family is a member.
Yes, we're a member of the Atlanta chapter.
And then the Stanford and the Columbia, but Blue Owl is a little bit different. Tell us about that.
I mean, it is actually a very interesting thing. I remember talking to one of my best friends from college, and we were just talking about the need to see us, or to see more people of color or women in corporate boards. And it really is, in some senses, an amazing opportunity, both for learning, but sharing and being involved there. And, I went to a finance business school, but I never think of myself as a finance person. So I'm like, how am I on this board of a Wall Street company? And so it's an alternative asset management company that has almost $160 billion in assets under management. Wow. It's a wild thing. And in some senses, I think to myself when I walk in, I know people are like, they've had the fairy tale of marrying the prince, or I don't even know, but my husband is wonderful, and he is a prince too, but that was never my dream. Yeah. But I walk in to these offices on the 37th floor of this Park Avenue with like 360 views of the city, and I'm like, this is my fairy tale. Like, this is wonderful. And the company, one of the co-CEOs is a Stanford alum, and I had worked a lot with him on a lot of these Stanford boards and activities. And so it is through that channel that I even learned about this. But it was at a time when I was like, you know what, I really think I would love to explore that. And, in some senses, I now think for especially women and people of color that it is such a great opportunity to be, literally at the table and to both understand and have the resources available. And so what is wonderful is that of the 3 independent directors, all 3 of us are women.
Wow.
So it's also set up in a way that I don't ever feel imposter syndrome. I don't ever feel like, what am I doing here? And in some senses also when it was proposed to me, like, hey, would you be interested in this? And I'm like, why? I have no background in finance. I have, I don't know what, I mean, I have background just in terms of my training and stuff, but like, I'm not a Wall Street person.
Right.
And a lot of them were like, we literally look right and left and we have that around us.
Yeah.
We need the different thinking. Yeah. They all see kind of the value in just different perspectives. Yeah. And I'm seeing that more and more, although I have learning quite a lot about, so it's an alternative asset management company that actually has 3 parts of the business. They do direct loans to large companies like Airbnb or, in the billion dollar loans that for companies that necessarily don't want to take out equity. Sure. But, they're great in that way. And then we take minority stakes in private equity and hedge funds as another very fascinating leg of the business. And it was consolidated and combined in 2021 to launch in that way. And then the third, which was an acquisition, is real estate investments, basically through triple net lease mortgages. I'm trying to simplify it as much as possible and also in my own way, but it is a very exciting business. And, some senses it's sort of like, with MedTrans Go, we're like that one-stop shop for like all of the healthcare needs. This is like a one-stop shop for your, for alternative assets. And so it's all under, and it's, I mean, the leadership and the folks on the team are some of the smartest, kindest, most interesting people I've met. And so being able to meet at least quarterly, but more than that, and be a part of this ecosystem is super fascinating.
I'll say that's dope.
Exactly. And they pay me for it.
Right.
I'm like,
That's what? That is so I was on a biography project for Robert Weaver, and he was on so many corporate boards as a Black man, and it was so important. And he was always on a campaign to do that, and it's just important. So thank you for being on these boards.
I mean,
and telling others that it's important.
Well, that will ultimately when I sell MedTrans Go, or when this gets that next stage, and I have more bandwidth, and or when the kids are out of the house. Sure. I mean, that to me is a no-brainer to be able to.
It changes the game.
It changes the game.
Yeah.
And it really, I mean, and again, I know that there was some luck and some good fortune that I'm even on this particular board of all boards, but I see opportunity for wealth building in the same way I see as an entrepreneur and as, within this Black Angel Tech Foundation, being able to not only be paid for this work, getting stock in a company, and being a part of that is it's an important piece. And I also feel like I fundamentally reinvest that into both mentoring, but also with my own funds into communities that are often not even seen. Exactly. And or I can give voice to that because I'm at the table with people, which is why I also really stay very engaged at Stanford and Columbia, less so only because of just time.
Right.
But because, just being able to do that, talking to one person, having that one story. It's important, and for people to see, oh, that's what a board member looks like, or that's what a board member could be.
Yeah. Nice. So I know we got to get you off to your next meeting. So
Yes,
before we go, I just want to ask one last question. I ask if you're a reader, a watcher, or a listener. And this is, let's find out who Dana is when she's not working all the time. So are you a reader, a watcher, or listener, or what else? What do you do in your not working time?
I would say a combination of all.
You're all. So what are some of your favorites that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, again, I've had to adapt to my life and the snippets of what I can do.
Yes.
So I like to consume by reading online newspapers or just stories. But I've rededicated this year to trying to read more books.
Yeah. I hear that a lot. A lot of my guests are like, I don't have time, but I'm trying to get back.
So I've created this new plan to get the book, start reading it at night if I have the time, but then supplementing it with audiobooks while I'm in the car, I can do that. And so because I found that to invest in a full book, it's very hard. And so just to have the different ways that I can consume it is helpful. So that's the reading part. The watching part, I think I just appreciate having stories told through television, film, and I don't have any particular shows that I'm watching now, but I do love all of them.
Okay.
Like I do, I mean.
What's your favorite Atlanta story? Is there one that you watch that's Atlanta? Are you a Ratchet TV consumer at all?
I'm not that much, and I also am guided a little bit by my kids. So like when my daughter's home from college or others, they're like, "Lau, you need to watch this," and of course then I love it. I mean, a lot of it is like dumb shows or romantic comedies, or everyone laughs at me. Like I love a good Hallmark.
The holidays are probably your favorite time.
It is. But I think this past holiday season, I think I overdid it. And now I'm like a little burnt out, like the story. But I loved how the stories, you know, they had everything from gay families to, you know, just diverse and mixed and global and Jewish and Christmas but it's still all very hokey. But I think I watched way too many. And so now I'm like, maybe I'm done. But I do love myself a good show just because it's like brainless and it doesn't require from me. Yeah. And then the listening part, I think just because being a mom, being the CEO of a company, being a part of all of these different activities and boards. And I think the listening is the most important piece.
So you're just always listening.
I'm always trying to listen because that's how I gain knowledge.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dana.
You're welcome. This is
awesome.
So nice.
Yeah,
It's like
I know.
talking to an old friend. And, you know, it's been really wonderful just to see your smile in person.
Definitely.
And, I mean, thank you for listening. I say I'm listening is my favorite thing, but I'm talking.
Yeah. All right, listeners, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, share, subscribe, leave us a review. Remember, 100 reviews in 2024. So until next time, bye for now.